David lived alone and chose to help out a helpless-looking young woman with a baby boy on a freezing day. In the days that followed, he sheltered them and realized how small the world really was. It had been years since David had chosen to help a stranger. Life had turned him into a rather bitter man, especially after Sarah, the love of his life, had walked out on him without a word 2 years ago. But one day, there was a young woman standing helplessly on the ice-laden street in front of David's house, holding a stroller with a baby that wouldn't stop crying. From a short distance, it looked like the woman was struggling, looking left and right, hoping for some sign of help. David rushed out to check on the two strangers. He found the woman sobbing helplessly, barely able to hold herself together. The baby looked hungry too. "Hello, I'm David, and I noticed you might need help. Can I help you get somewhere? I could drive you and the baby to your home." The woman seemed startled, and her quivering lips struggled to speak. "We have nowhere, no one." She burst into tears again. David was clueless about how to respond, but there was something about the woman's sorrow that moved him deeply. Before he knew it, he found himself saying, "Listen, it's not safe out here. My house is right there. Come on, I can fix you something warm to eat, at least for now." The woman paused to think, sighed, and followed David with the stroller, mumbling a thank you under her icy breath. How do you know this woman?" David asked Lola. David and the woman cooked lunch together quietly and shared the meal without needing to know much about each other. "What's his name?" was the only question David asked her, pointing towards the baby. "This little baby boy is Liam, and he is my everything," Lola said. "He is the only loving family I have left." David observed the soreness in the young woman's voice and the redness of sorrow on her face. So young, so exhausted, David thought, wondering who her mannerisms reminded him of. Even if he couldn't figure it out, he wouldn't send the woman and the baby away onto the street again. "You can live here for as long as you need to," he assured Lola. This was the kindest thing anyone had done for her. She grabbed the opportunity to have a safe, comfortable shelter for herself and Liam for a few days. And she tried to return David's kindness in every little way she could. She made her gratitude known by cooking meals, handling other chores around the house without being asked to, and making conversation with David whenever she saw him having trouble sleeping at night. Liam, too, was well taken care of. It wasn't just Lola who looked after him. David found himself taking care of the baby as well. It was the last thing you would expect someone like David to do, given how he had vowed to never raise children. "They're such energy suckers," he would say to Sarah. But with Liam, it felt different. It didn't feel awkward to hold him or play with him. Love towards a baby had never come to him so naturally before. So there David was, living the most meaningful yet strange week of his life, in the presence of the young woman and the baby. Just when it had started healing his bitter heart, another twist awaited him. "I will be back in 3 days. Please feel at home," David had told Lola before leaving for his work tour. But when he came back, it was as if he had walked into his old empty life all over again. No sign of Lola or Liam, no toys around the house, no sign of laughter or light. David felt his instinct talk to him again. "Something tells me they must be in trouble." He immediately took out his car and drove around the neighborhood, looking for Lola and Liam. After a long search, he finally found them at a hospital. He had learned that a young woman matching Lola's description had admitted a baby boy named Liam there 2 days ago. David rushed to the room and found Lola kneeling by the bassinet in which baby Liam was asleep. He was connected to several tubes and beeping machines, and it was the most heartbreaking thing David had ever seen. It turned out that Liam needed surgery, although Lola still had no idea how she would pay for it. Hearing this, David immediately went to the billing section. He paid in advance for the boy's entire treatment. I don't know how to thank you." Lola looked in disbelief at the kindest man she had ever met. She didn't notice when the bag she had been holding onto slipped and fell, scattering a few belongings on the floor. That's when David spotted something that took him back in time. Among the things that had fallen out of Lola's purse was the photo of a cozy house in the middle of the mountains, an old swing in front of the house. In the swing sat the woman who had once meant everything to David. It was Sarah. How do you know this woman?" David asked Lola. "She's our mother," Lola said, kissing the photo and choking up. That's when David learned the whole truth about Lola and Liam, and finally knew why they felt so strangely connected to him. David remembered that weekend in the mountains when he and Sarah had their last big fight. They had been fighting about the same thing, the only thing that made things uncomfortable between them: having children. It was an ugly fight, and when Sarah was sure David wouldn't change his mind about raising a family, she packed up her stuff and hugged David goodbye, hoping he would stop her. But he didn't, and Sarah got away. And as it turned out, she found an acceptable man shortly after the breakup, a divorcee with a 19-year-old daughter, Lola. She was a really sweet woman, and she took my mother's place so naturally. I loved her. Lola wept, holding David's hand. David remained speechless as he continued to hear the story of the woman he loved and lost. He was happy that Sarah got to fulfill her dream of getting pregnant, but what Lola said next shocked him to the core. A few months later, Liam was born, Lola said without smiling. But it was the darkest day of our lives because Sarah, my sweet stepmother, died during childbirth. David froze as he heard that after Sarah's passing, her husband asked for a DNA test to check for Liam's paternity. The man suspected that the boy didn't look anything like him. It was then that the truth came out and shook everyone's worlds. The test showed that the man was not Liam's father, and instantly he wanted nothing to do with the child. Liam was going to be dropped off at the local shelter when Lola stopped her father. I begged him to keep the child. I promised him I'd take care of Liam's every need. I pleaded with him not to be so heartless, and when he didn't budge, I walked out of the house with Liam, determined to find his birth father, Lola revealed. But this photo and this address on the back is all I have. David's hands trembled as he turned the photo over and read the address. It was his address, except for the house number, which was mentioned incorrectly. The house number, it isn't 211, David said, his voice heavy with emotion. It's 121. That's the right house. It took Lola a moment to realize that the house number was David's. It's you, you're the father. Lola gasped and hugged David. David, who had closed himself off emotionally for years since Sarah left, finally let his tears out. He cried for losing Sarah, and he smiled thinking of his son. And right at that moment, the doctors at the hospital walked up to him and Lola. Liam's surgery was a success. He's quite the trooper, the little one. As David watched Liam and Lola bond in the NICU that day, he made himself a promise. For the rest of his life, he would take care of the two beautiful souls who had walked into his life when he thought he had lost everything.